Greetings once again, friends. I'm joined again by my dear friend Marisol Mercado. Marisol, welcome.
Thank you.
Today, we would like to to touch a little bit the parenting issue and talk about one challenge that every parent in our age faces, and that is how to deal with their kids who are better friends with their social media accounts than with them as parents. In our age, it seems like the little device called tablet, iPad, phone, even took over the education of our kids, and parents sometimes feel helpless. Let me tell you a story. I was on a flight to Nairobi, and right ahead of me, it was a family with two children, an infant and little girl, probably five in my estimation. Although she was a very good girl, as soon as she was sat on her chair, her dad gave her an iPad to keep her occupied. I took the initiative to talk to the father. I introduced myself. We started, with small talk. And then I asked him, you know what? I've noticed that you gave your daughter the tablet. Why did you do that? Well, of course, because I want her to to be on her best behavior. This is an 8 hour flight. Surely she's gonna get bored, and I don't want to create discomfort for the other passengers. I said, look, I agree with you, but, and here I use something very, very strong. You can achieve the same things by giving her a joint or maybe a shot of vodka or tequila. She'll go to sleep. Mission accomplished. We land in Nairobi and, she's going to be awake by then. And that really shocked this gentleman. Now, Marisol, social media addiction is a recognized condition right now in
Yes, it
at least in
is.
the United States, here in the United Kingdom. It's like a disease.
Mhm.
Tell me, please, about your dealings with such situations.
Oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about from that little, movie that you paint for us. Parents' inability to allow children to get bored, it's a huge problem in the here and the now and in the future. Being bored is really important for development because, in part, it creates creativity. So, when kids are bored, it's their job to figure out what is around to entertain myself. Also, when parents anticipate and they just give them a device to be entertained, children's ability to cope with their own stress are worse. They're not able, it's something called self regulation. Children need to be taught that in the airplane, especially at that age, you're not going to run, you're not going to scream, but there's other activities that you can do to help yourself, right? Such as singing, imagining that you're flying next to the airplane, right? Imagine using your imagination, talking to people around, but also it, giving a child the use of a device, it negates the need for children to reach out to adults for help, for support. Later on, I'm sure that we can catch this father when this little girl becomes a pre-teenager in 4 or 5 years complaining that she doesn't talk to him, that she doesn't go to him for comfort, for information, for direction, and doesn't give him any attention. But parents are creating that, you know, and so it's a problem that we're seeing, um, and sometimes we see it too late. We
Right.
see it too late because it becomes, not only it becomes an addiction, but it has affected the overall physical, social, psychological development of the human. We know that when children are glued to their devices, their lungs, their muscles, the heart are not going to develop the same. Their inability to play outside, right? They don't get enough vitamin D. That will have a huge impact in physical development. Not, and we have not even talked about what that does socially, right? There's a lot of social information that children can only gather through experiencing play and social situation with other children that are nonverbal, right? And they're not getting those because of the devices. I can go on and on to talk about how, the use of devices affects in all levels in different developmental ages, because it does. It's horrendous.
Let's stay for one more second on the physical part. You said something about certain organs, the lungs and other organs. I've read a recent study in South Korea whereby young kids having to wear glasses is nearly 100%, whilst 25, 30 years ago, it was less than 10%. And if you remember, I remember in my class when I was in primary school, it was maybe one or two kids wearing glasses. Nowadays, almost every kid wears glasses. And I'm not talking about those Google glasses that helps you connect with a virtual reality, but I
Prescribed.
yes, prescribed eyesight glasses. So it is a serious problem that affects even their physical health. Now, let's move to the social part. Okay. I've heard arguments saying that this is their world, so we have to respect it. Imagine I'm a parent. I have a 5-year old, although my granddaughter is only 2. And I don't have much authority. I don't have authority at all over her.
Mhm.
But I have to commend my children for the fact that they don't allow her to get near the phone. Yeah,
Mhm.
that is a very good thing. Is that good enough?
It's a good start, right? Not just the phone, but we have to think of iPads, computers, and TVs. It's a very good start, right? But also we have to look at, um, can we play with children, right? Can we provide children with opportunities to play with other kids so they can start having those experiences that will lead them to develop social skills? There are so many skills that we humans get from play that we only notice in adulthood. The adults that didn't play, I noticed that, like when I work with in families, or when we start talking about relationships, the lack of basic creativity on how nurture a relationship, the fear that adults sometimes experience when they don't dare to do something new, right? It all comes from the lack of of play. High levels of anxieties in adults often come from not having enough playful experiences growing up, because through play, children create, connect with themselves, deal with their emotions, invite others to play, decide if they, get a feel for others, and decide if they don't want others to play with them. And all of those are fundamental skills, right? In interpersonal relationship. My 4-year old grandbaby, sometimes I ask her, I think I mentioned it in a previous podcast, I think it was with you, as I ask her, let's go to the park. And she goes, no. I said, why? She goes, I don't know. I just don't want to go. I just don't want to go. And it's amazing that at 4, she already has the awareness that I don't want that.
Mm.
And for some adults, you take someone on a date and you say, where do you want to have dinner? Or your spouse, and most people say, I don't know, wherever you want, right? So we see the impact that a childhood had when it didn't have enough games, enough play. We see it in the teen years, but we see it for the rest of life, and we see how it affects how they feel about themselves, how they connect with their own bodies, with their own brain, with their own spirit, and how they connect with others in relationships. It's amazing. It's amazing. We see this around the world because in some cultures, it's part of the culture not to allow children to play. And play is seen as a waste of time.
Mhm.
And parents say, go and do something productive, stop playing. Little they know that all the play that children engage as children is building an internal muscle that can only be built through play.
Yes, I agree with you, not because I can relate to that, but because I can see the challenges that parents have nowadays to play with their kids simply because they themselves they don't know how to play.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if I was going to start the business, I would start a school for parents to teach them how to play with their kids. So basically, every parent can become a preschool teacher or a primary school teacher by practicing with their children. So, what would you say to those parents that say, "I really don't know how to play. It's easier for me
Right.
to give them the tablet."
Sit down and observe your children play. Just sit next to them and just observe quietly. I often send my clients to play with their kids often. And and sometimes I ask them to record it so I can see it. And what I see is an adult taking over the game, leading the game. Like they don't know how to play without winning. Play for the sake of having fun, for the sake of using this toy, this artifact from a place of curiosity, from a place of relaxation, right? Exploration. And it's like the parent wants to win, right? And so I would say sit to observe your own kids and allow the kids to lead your play. Let them tell you how that we're going to play. Don't impose an idea, a concept, a way of doing things. And I think it's very hard for adults, some adults. It's very hard because we have to let go of control And we have to let go of the mental agendas that we have, that we need to produce, that we need to, create something, that we have to win, achieve something. And so, yeah, some adults will have a hard time with that, but I think it's very healing. I think it's very, very healing, and it's very, very important, even as an adult.
I would go one step further and give some ideas for our the parents that are watching. Uh, Even if a game has certain rules, you are allowed to change those rules together with your children.
Right.
Make your own rules if that's more fun. Don't be stuck into a piece of paper that presents those rules. Is this a step too far?
No, no, I think as an adult, as a society, we have lost the meaning, and we have lost um, touch with something so basic and so relevant to mental health and to relationship. It's fun. You ask, couples, when was the last time you had fun, and they look at each other as like, no, I just want to run away from him or her, or I just, want to hurt her or hurt him, right? Fun is such an important ingredient of creativity, of relationship, of workplace, of productivity. Is the basics for, I would say, everything. That's the reason, we some people wait for vacation to have fun. And I tell them, what about if you cannot afford a vacation? Can you do something fun every day, something, relaxing? And so it becomes an impossible task for a lot of people when they don't have prior experience with it.
Let me try to be the advocate of dads. Your son plays a game. Your son has a PlayStation. What would you say to a dad that would consider playing with their son? Even that electronic PlayStation game, is that also part of the fun you were talking about?
you know we have to connect with our kids according to what is relevant to them. If you have a teenager that is hooked to electronics, that's your starting point. You learn to play that game, you get competitive with them, but then you little by little start creating opportunities to do other kinds of games, right? To say, let's go for a walk, let's go fishing, right? Let's go hiking, let's go for ice cream, And little by little, you start creating short experiences, short moments in which kids get to explore, the outdoors. They get to hear maybe a childhood experience, something about the history of the family, right? And so little by little, then you start adding a game outside of electronics. But your starting point is going to have to be where the kid is. So I think every family has a way of connecting. I will never say don't connect with electronics, but if your goal is to reduce the use of electronics, start connecting with them, based on electronics, and little by little move to other activities.
In other words, let's not be stuck into one or the other. That is my approach as well. We cannot burn all the devices, put them on fire like they did with the Bibles in the Middle Ages. It will have the opposite effect. Just restricting to zero access to devices is more detrimental than actually beneficial, I
It
would say.
create resistance.
It will create resistance. So knowing how to balance and how to negotiate these two worlds in which we live in, the digital and the analog, basically, they're two worlds. It's the best recipe for success. Your example and your advice is applicable to one that lost the start. So if you gave your baby the tablet to stay quiet when the baby was 2 or 3, don't expect that at 7 they are going to come with you play football outside. So this is a this parenting method should start the day the baby is born.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think for this generation, it's really hard for them not to give them a device to their babies because they were giving a device when they were babies themselves. Um, I I actually I actually have been encouraged by young adults. I'm seeing a lot of young adults that are saying absolutely no device because I suffered, because I didn't get enough attention from my parents, because for whatever reason. So if that would be the best. The best is not to. I think in United States, the Pediatric Association advises parents to do, I want to say it's an hour. I want to say it's an hour a day for toddlers. I think I read something like that. So it's very, very minimum. I say none is better. I actually, let me share this with you. I was talking about this topic in a conference, and someone said, "What about if I follow your advice, and when my kid goes to kindergarten, he's the only one that has been unexposed and doesn't know how to turn on a computer?" You
You don't know
know,
your kid and you don't know the world that you're talking about.
I'm like, give it a week and he'll be teaching you, you know? They learn so fast. But I can see how, with the use of artificial intelligence, how parents feel that the kids are going to be so far behind without, having that prior exposure. And I honestly think that in the future, the people that will be ahead are those that have an awareness of the environment and spirituality, because everybody is going to be so fixated in artificial intelligence, and they would not know anything else about anything else. So
I've seen recently, last week, a new device produced by Google, a pair of glasses, yeah,
I saw it.
that allow people to speak to someone whose language they don't speak. Both you and I are fully bilingual. I speak a little bit of Spanish as well. I know the benefits of being able to speak more than one language. What do you think of that type of device? Is that helpful? Is that something that will actually encourage kids and people to remain limited? I'm not going to say any other stronger word, but to remain limited. You know what? You don't have to learn another language. You have the glasses, wherever you go, they speak, you see on the glass what they say, you talk to them, and
Don't make any effort.
no.
Don't make any effort to understand. Here in United States, our culture is not big on being bilingual, right? We know that other cultures kids grow up with three, four languages. So that would be one impairment. But also, thinking of it from an emotional perspective, I think we're teaching kids not to be fully present, when they're in conversations. They're not being trained to look at people's faces and train the brain to infer what they're saying. I remember when my second son, he must have been maybe 6 or 7. He came home so excited, and he said, a kid came from Brazil to my classroom, and the teacher put it next to me because she thought that Spanish and Portuguese were similar. And I said, Giancarlo, what did you do? He said, I just let him hang out with me the whole day. And I'm actually learning a few phrases because we went to the back to the schoolyard, and he said football. And I thought, well, that must be football. And he became interested, right? And that kid and him ended up finding different ways to communicate. So I think there's something that we're missing socially when we're allowing these devices to do these things, and we're missing out on a bigger opportunity in communication, which is the nonverbal, right? It's how I feel about you, how our bodies react to each other when we encounter each other, right? And so we miss out on developing the those verbal cues that go beyond language.
Marisol, allow me to say kudos to that teacher because they did the next available best thing, and I can even picture JC with that Brazilian kid. So it seems like that teacher had an idea about how certain cultures and languages can relate better. Now, as we draw to a close, because we're going to come back to this topic, is a very vast topic to talk about. Um, I would like to see your opinion. Speaking another language is not necessary the permit to get into that culture.
Mhm.
I can tell you from experience for a fact that with my English, as limited as it is, I can get by both in the United Kingdom and in the United States. However, there is that say that suggests that America and Britain are two countries divided by one common language.
Mhm.
So those glasses might be like a first aid kit. Yeah,
Right.
you go somewhere, and that individual speaks only Kiswahili, and you need to communicate with them, or at least you need to understand what they are saying to you. Absolutely fine. As a first aid kit, I agree with it. Other than that, I would say parents don't allow your kids to use those glasses instead of spending some time to learn another language and immersing themselves into another culture.
We need to have common ground experiences. We need to understand culture cues. I think being bilingual, trilingual, it's really important. I think it's relevant, don't get me wrong, but I think there's so many culture cues that we miss, if we're not being observant. It's interesting that my son is 34 years old and he still remembers the experiences, the social encounters that he had with this kid. And I think, the more technological we get, the more technological, we allow our kids to become. I think in the process we become a little less human. because we're not able to feel our own feelings. And if we are not able to feel our own feelings, then we don't know how to deal with our own feelings. And that makes us completely inadequate in developing empathy for someone else. And what do we have when we don't have empathy? We probably have a sociopath. We have we have humans that are completely careless to others. But the starting point is us, right? The internal disconnection that we get, it gets passed down to, communities and to other generations. And I actually think that it's quite dangerous to keep going that path.
Right. We kind of moved away from social media addiction. Using
Mhm.
those devices can be considered one of them. It can become an addiction. Last question. What is the cure to social media addiction? You hinted throughout the program, but I would like you to summarize in one conclusion.
I think it's a very complicated issue here in United States. We already have protocols and programs that, adolescents and adults having to be hospitalized in those programs to deal with those addictions. But I think there's nothing more powerful than adults having the intention to correct, to make some corrections. And I think I work a lot in reduction, right? If we can work on daily reductions of, social media exposure and start increasing little by little more human contact, more sports, more hobbies, more outdoor activities. I think little by little we can keep turning, that tendency until it gets to be reduced significantly. But it's going to take the commitment of adults, and it's going to require consistency. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we humans have. We know how to do the right thing, but being consistent is always the challenge. So that would be my recommendation, to have the intention to do it and have the consistency. And again, if this is something that you cannot do on your own, then find the support of a professional.
I think there are professionals. I actually, it's a new profession, so to speak, to deal with these conditions. I would like to say something that may sound a little bit stronger, along with what you said, consistency, commitment. I would like to say that sometimes this requires sacrifice, and that is sacrificing your own schedule, your
Comfort.
own comfort. You have to sacrifice maybe watching that game that you looked forward to the whole week, and by doing so, you will see the fruits of your sacrifice. You and I are not advocating for eradicating or switching them off or
Right,
getting rid of the devices.
right,
You and I advocate for finding the right balance.
right.
And because of that imbalance that we have so many kids that are right now suffering with social media addiction. Once again, it may sound like a broken record. There is hope, there is healing, there are solutions.
Absolutely. And we have to also, before we end, we have to share that the problem with social media is not only addiction, it's how we know that increases symptoms of anxiety and depression. We know that once we have a child, an adolescent, and even an adult that start reducing social media, when that person has the right clinician working with them, those symptoms of anxiety and depression will start getting better. And so social media not only causes addiction, right? But also it it makes worse symptoms of depression and anxiety as well.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Marisol, thank you so much for today. Thank you for your insight. Stay tuned. Next time, we're going to talk about bullying. Until then, stay cool, stay safe, stay off social media as much as you can. God bless you. Thank you, Marisol.
You're welcome.